Have you ever wondered why, even after achieving what you once believed would make you happy, a quiet emptiness still lingers within? Why, after reaching the peak, does joy fade faster than the applause? In a world overflowing with comfort, technology, and endless opportunities, people have never been so restless, so unsure of what truly brings them fulfillment. We are surrounded by pleasure, yet haunted by a profound sense of emptiness. This is where Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience steps in, a book that does not merely speak about happiness, but redefines it. It whispers a radical truth. Happiness is not something we find, but something we create, in the rhythm between challenge and skill, effort and surrender. Flow, as Csikszentmihalyi describes it, is that mysterious state where a person becomes so immersed in an activity that the boundary between the self and the world dissolves. The mind is neither anxious nor bored. Time disappears, and for a fleeting moment, one becomes life itself, moving effortlessly within its current. Imagine a painter who forgets to eat or sleep while working on a canvas. A dancer whose body and music merge into one. A climber gripping the mountain not for victory, but for the communion of will and stone. That is flow, a sacred alignment of energy and purpose. But this state is fragile. It doesn't emerge in comfort or chaos, but in the thin space between them, where one's abilities are stretched just enough to meet the challenge ahead. Too little demand, and boredom sets in. Too much, and anxiety overwhelms. Yet in perfect balance, the spirit awakens, alert, vibrant, alive. Flow, then, is not just a psychological term. It is a metaphor for the art of living. A reminder that meaning arises not when life is easy, but when every fiber of being is engaged in something worthy of it. But here lies the paradox. Modern society promises happiness through pleasure, wealth, entertainment, recognition. Yet the more we chase them, the more elusive happiness becomes. Pleasure is fleeting. It stimulates the senses but starves the soul. Flow, on the other hand, feeds the soul while silencing the restless mind. And that is why this book remains timeless. It is not merely about performance or productivity. It is about rediscovering what it means to be fully human. So perhaps the real question isn't, how can I be happy? But rather, when was the last time I was so deeply alive that I forgot to ask if I was happy at all? Because of that, Csikszentmihalyi would say, it is the moment you enter the flow. There is a moment, brief yet infinite, when the world seems to fade away, when noise turns into silence, and time ceases to exist. That is the moment when the self dissolves, and something far greater takes its place. That is flow. Csikszentmihalyi did not describe happiness as a feeling of pleasure, but as a state of order within consciousness. When the mind is completely aligned, every thought, every movement, and every decision follows with seamless precision. There is no hesitation, no distraction, no division between doing and being. Flow, he says, is not a gift of circumstance. It is the outcome of structure. It emerges when challenge and skill stand in perfect tension, like two notes vibrating in harmony. When the challenge exceeds one's ability, anxiety rises. When the task is too easy, boredom sets in. But between those poles lies a sacred middle ground, the space where human potential reveals itself. It is here that the artist forgets hunger. The athlete forgets exhaustion. The scientist forgets time itself. In that state, effort becomes effortless, and consciousness merges with the act. Yet, flow is not simply about doing something one loves. It is about becoming what one does. The painter doesn't paint. The painting paints through him. The writer doesn't write. The words find their own rhythm through his hands. And in that merging, the boundaries of ego, fear, doubt, vanity, fall away like dead leaves in autumn. To live in flow is to experience unity, not as an idea, but as a reality that floods the senses and silences thought. But how fragile that unity is. The moment awareness of self returns, am I doing this well? Will others approve? The spell is broken. The stream of consciousness splits again, and the noise of comparison returns. This is why flow is not found in external success, but in inner absorption. It is not a reward for achievement, it is the pathway to meaning itself. Csikszentmihalyi's vision was radical. He dared to suggest that happiness could be engineered, not by changing life's conditions, but by mastering the conditions of the mind. By learning to direct attention, the most precious of all human resources, toward what truly matters. And attention, the focused energy of consciousness, is the essence of flow. Where attention goes, life expands. Where attention scatters, life fragments. Thus, the art of happiness is the art of focus, to train the mind to dance with challenge, not retreat from it. Most people drift between boredom and anxiety, pulled by desire and fear. But those who find flow stand at the center, where life becomes neither an escape nor an ordeal, but a symphony. In that symphony, joy is not loud, it is precise. It hums quietly beneath the surface, like the calm current under a river's rush. And perhaps, this is what Csikszentmihalyi wanted us to understand. That happiness is not something that happens to us, it is something that happens through us. When we stop fighting the current and begin to move with it. Flow, then, is not a miracle. It is a discipline, a way of training the soul to find harmony within chaos. When one learns to enter that current, life ceases to be a series of random moments. It becomes a dance, a conversation between order and freedom, between the known and the possible. And in that dance, meaning is born. Pleasure is easy. It visits, dazzles, and vanishes, like a spark that burns bright but leaves the night unchanged. Yet what Csikszentmihalyi sought was not the spark, but the flame that endures. He saw the tragedy of modern life, people mistaking comfort for happiness, and stimulation for meaning. We consume, we scroll, we acquire, always searching for the next high, yet the soul remains unsatisfied, restless as ever. Pleasure is passive. It happens to you. Flow is active, it happens through you. Pleasure gives, flow demands. But what it gives back, in return, is far greater, a taste of the eternal. When one enters flow, pleasure transforms into something quieter, more profound, almost sacred. The mind ceases to chase reward. It simply becomes absorbed, surrendered, radiant from within. It is the stillness that a surfer feels while suspended on the crest of a wave. The serenity of a craftsman shaping wood, breath steady, hands sure. The profound peace of a mother watching her child sleep, knowing. In that instant, life makes perfect sense. That, Csikszentmihalyi wrote, is not mere joy, it is ecstasy. But not the wild ecstasy of indulgence, rather, the calm ecstasy of perfect engagement. A paradoxical stillness, motion without restlessness, intensity without strain. Pleasure makes the heart race. Flow makes it steady. And perhaps that is the secret our age has forgotten. True happiness is not an explosion, it is a current, deep, steady, and alive. When the mind is in flow, the chatter falls silent. There is no me and my success, no should or must. There is only this, the moment unfolding perfectly, one breath, one movement, one heartbeat at a time. That is why flow feels both potent and pure. It frees us not from the world, but from the constant noise inside us. It strips away everything false until what remains is the naked joy of existence itself. Yet, to live like this requires courage, the courage to give oneself completely. To be fully absorbed means risking the loss of the illusion of control. It means surrendering the self, trusting that something larger, the rhythm of life, knows what to do. In that surrender, the mind stops demanding, "What's in it for me?" and begins to whisper, "What wants to happen through me?" It is this shift, from seeking pleasure to becoming presence, that marks the birth of a more profound happiness. A happiness not born of satisfaction, but of participation. To participate in life so completely that there is no separation left between actor and act, between observer and scene. This is the essence of flow. When Csikszentmihalyi observed artists, climbers, surgeons, chess players, musicians, he saw the same light in their eyes. It was not excitement, it was absorption. A quiet fire. He understood then that happiness does not come from escaping effort, but from refining it, transforming effort into art, pain into purpose, action into meaning. That is the silent promise of flow. When you stop chasing happiness, happiness begins to follow you, not as a prize, but as a natural consequence of being fully alive. And so, the question begins to shift. Not, what makes me happy, but what allows me to disappear, and let life itself take the stage? Because only in that disappearance does one finally find peace. Not the peace of still waters, but the peace of a river that knows exactly where it's going. The modern mind is a crowded place. 1,000 voices clamor within it: ambition, fear, memory, desire. Each pulls in a different direction, fragmenting attention until the self feels like a mirror shattered into pieces. Csikszentmihalyi saw this fragmentation as the root of our unhappiness. The problem, he said, is not that life is meaningless, but that consciousness is disordered. When attention is scattered, the self becomes a battlefield. When attention is unified, the self becomes a symphony. And that is what flow restores: order within consciousness. In flow, every thought, every motion, every intention aligns toward one direction. The chaos subsides, the fragments find coherence. It is as though the inner architecture rebuilds itself, quietly, invisibly, moment by moment. To understand flow is to know that the self is not a fixed entity. It is an ongoing construction, built by what we choose to attend to. Every act of focus shapes it, every distraction fractures it. Thus, our attention is not merely a tool, it is the sculptor of identity. Most people, Csikszentmihalyi wrote, live in a state of psychic entropy, where energy leaks into anxiety, regret, and craving. But in flow, entropy reverses. The psyche becomes ordered, strong, luminous, a self that is fully alive within its own harmony. It is a rare kind of freedom. Not freedom from effort, but liberty from inner division. The runner feels the stride before it happens. The musician anticipates the following note without thought. The consciousness of me dissolves into the immediacy of doing. That dissolution is not a loss, it is a liberation. The ego, with its fears and defenses, finally steps aside. And in that quiet vacancy, life itself flows through. But the ego resists. It whispers that control must never be surrendered. It fears disappearing, yet what it fears most is what it secretly longs for: unity. For beneath all ambition lies a hidden yearning, the desire to belong wholly to something. To be fully absorbed, fully seen, even if only by the act itself. That is the paradox of the human condition. We crave meaning, yet cling to control. We long to lose ourselves, yet fear the loss. Flow is the resolution of that paradox, the place where surrender becomes mastery. When consciousness is ordered, a quiet joy arises, not loud, not ecstatic, but grounded. It is the joy of coherence. The feeling that, for once, everything is precisely as it should be. And this order, Csikszentmihalyi insisted, can be cultivated. It is not reserved for saints or geniuses. It begins simply, by learning to direct attention toward things that challenge and expand us, rather than dull and consume us. To watch an artisan at work is to witness the art itself. Every motion deliberate, every pause meaningful. He is not trying to be mindful, he is. His being and doing are one and inseparable. In such moments, time bends. The present deepens until it feels eternal. And one realizes that peace does not come from the absence of effort, but from the perfect alignment within effort itself. That is why flow feels sacred, because it reveals a truth about existence that no doctrine can teach. The self is not found by searching for it, but by forgetting it in the act of living. When the painter paints, the climber climbs, the musician plays. They are not escaping life, they are returning to its purest form. And that, perhaps, is the highest form of happiness. To be so completely alive that the boundary between self and world disappears. When the self ceases to fight the current, it becomes the current. And in that surrender, there is no loss, only peace. There are moments when the world stops measuring itself. The clock still ticks, yet somehow, its rhythm no longer binds you. You move, think, breathe, but outside of time. In the state of flow, Csikszentmihalyi wrote, the ordinary experience of time collapses. A few minutes may feel like hours, or hours vanish as if they were seconds. This is not because time itself changes, but because attention has shifted entirely from measuring life to living it. The human mind typically stands outside its own actions, watching, commenting, and calculating. But in flow, that distance disappears. There is no observer, no analyst, no critic, only awareness flowing seamlessly with what it perceives. To the sculptor shaping stone, there is no before or after. To the dancer mid-motion, there is no beginning or end. There is only this, the unbroken now. And within that now, there is peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from escape, but the profound peace of total absorption. When one is truly immersed, time is no longer an external structure but a living pulse within the act itself. It is no longer something to be managed, it becomes something to be inhabited. That is why flow feels infinite, even if it lasts only moments. Because the present expands to fill the whole of consciousness. There is no room for regret, no space for anticipation. The self, freed from past and future, awakens to the sheer fullness of existence. To live in this way is to rediscover what ancient mystics once called the eternal moment. But Csikszentmihalyi's insight was not mystical, it was psychological, observable, measurable. He showed that when the brain's attention is fully engaged, the sense of self, and with it, the sense of time, is suspended. The mind, for once, moves in perfect rhythm with reality. And in that rhythm, something magical happens. The fear of time, of wasting it, losing it, running out of it, dissolves. Because in flow, time is not a threat, it is a partner. Perhaps this is why the most alive people rarely ask, where did the time go? They know. It went into life itself. It became part of something eternal, transformed into creation, expression, meaning. Outside of flow, time is a burden. We chase it, fight it, fear it. We count the hours, fill the minutes, drown the silence with noise. But in flow, time serves us. It becomes a current carrying consciousness, forward, effortlessly, gracefully. This is the paradox of flow. You lose time, yet you gain eternity. And when you emerge from it, sweaty, exhausted, perhaps even trembling, you are not depleted. You are renewed. Because for a moment, you were no longer separate from life, you were life. Flow is not just a way of doing, it is a way of being. It is what happens when the machinery of thought stops grinding against itself and begins to hum in harmony. When action and awareness blend so thoroughly that even the passage of time bows in silence. It is in this silence that the most profound joy resides. Not in the thrill of achievement, not in the applause afterward, but in the pure, wordless realization that, for a fleeting moment, you touched something that cannot be measured, and yet it changed everything. And maybe this is what Csikszentmihalyi meant when he said, the best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times, but those when we are fully engaged, when we stretch our body and mind to their limits. Because in those moments, time no longer counts against us, it flows through us. And when it does, life becomes not a series of ticking seconds, but a single, luminous movement, eternal, unbroken, whole. There is a secret hidden within every challenge, one that most never discover. Pain, when entered deeply enough, transforms. Struggle, when embraced fully, ceases to wound. Flow, Csikszentmihalyi realized, is not born from ease, but from tension, from the elegant dance between what is just beyond our grasp and what we already know. It thrives not in comfort, but in the borderlands of discomfort, the place where growth begins. When life demands more than we think we can give, we often recoil. We resist, We complain. We retreat into distraction. Yet those who have tasted flow understand that challenge is not an obstacle, it is the invitation itself. The climber does not curse the mountain's height. The musician does not dread the complexity of a new composition. The writer does not shrink from the blank page. Each, in their own way, knows that struggle is the threshold of transformation. For flow to emerge, the task must stretch the self, but not shatter it. It must pull one's attention to the edge of chaos, and then demand mastery there. At that edge, the human spirit ignites. To face difficulty with total presence is to transmute fear into focus. In that moment, the heart steadies, the breath deepens, and every sense aligns toward the goal. The challenge that once seemed threatening becomes magnetic. It draws the soul toward expansion. And then, something astonishing happens. Effort ceases to feel like effort. The body moves with its own intelligence. The mind, once anxious, becomes precise and silent. The impossible becomes possible, not because reality changed, but because consciousness did. That is the alchemy of flow. Pain becomes purpose. Effort becomes grace. Struggle becomes joy. However, this transformation requires faith, not in luck or fate, but in one's capacity to adapt, learn, and evolve. It requires the courage to stay with difficulty long enough for beauty to emerge. Those who flee at the first sign of discomfort never discover the quiet ecstasy hidden within effort. Every artist knows this truth. Creation begins in resistance, in the stubborn refusal of chaos to take shape. But as the hands keep working, as the mind keeps tuning itself to the task, a rhythm appears. And suddenly, resistance turns into revelation. The sculptor doesn't defeat the stone, he listens to it. The surfer doesn't conquer the wave, he joins its motion. The thinker doesn't force the answer, he allows thought to flow through him like water finding its way through rock. That is flow, the reconciliation of struggle and serenity. It teaches us that happiness is not the absence of difficulty, but the mastery of it. That fulfillment comes not from avoiding pain, but from refining it into form. When one learns to meet adversity with curiosity instead of fear, to engage rather than escape, life itself begins to shift. Each obstacle becomes a teacher. Each limitation becomes a mirror, reflecting the edges of our own becoming. And perhaps that is why, when people recall their most meaningful moments, they rarely mention ease. They speak of the trials that broke them open, the projects that consumed them, the days when effort felt endless, yet something inside whispered, "Keep going." Because beneath all hardship lies a subtle grace, the chance to merge so completely with the task that the self disappears. And in that disappearance, joy quietly takes its place. So the question is no longer, how can I avoid pain? But instead, what can this pain teach me to create? To live this way, to meet life as an artist meets the blank canvas. It is to turn existence itself into a work of art. Flow, then, is not an escape from struggle. It is the transformation of struggle into song. There comes a moment, after the rhythm of flow has revealed itself, when one begins to sense that something far more profound is at work. It is no longer just about the joy of mastery or the pleasure of immersion. Beneath the surface, flow begins to whisper of something ancient, the blueprint of meaning itself. Csikszentmihalyi saw this clearly. The purpose of flow was never mere enjoyment, it was a form of evolution. For when attention is shaped, when energy is directed and refined, consciousness begins to build itself. Each moment of deep engagement leaves behind a structure, invisible yet enduring, that becomes the very architecture of a meaningful life. Meaning, he realized, is not found, it is constructed, brick by brick, task by task, through the silent labor of focus. When a person devotes themselves wholly to something, whether it is art, science, compassion, or craft, they carve channels within the mind where chaos no longer reigns. Energy, once scattered by desire and distraction, becomes ordered, luminous, whole. And from that order, the self takes form. It is easy to confuse pleasure with meaning. Pleasure soothes, but it does not build. It fades as soon as it is consumed. But flow creates. It forges connections between effort and essence, linking the momentary act with something timeless. That is why people who live within flow often speak of alignment. As if, for once, their inner world and outer action finally speak the same language. This harmony is not luck, it is design. The human psyche craves coherence. It seeks to weave its many fragments into a single pattern. Flow is the loom upon which that pattern is woven. To live a life of meaning, then, is not to chase happiness, but to cultivate integration, to unify thought, emotion, and action into one continuous movement. Each challenge met, each skill refined, becomes another thread in the tapestry of being. The beauty of this architecture lies in its growth through participation, rather than possession. You cannot hoard flow, cannot bottle it or store it for later. It exists only in the act, in giving yourself to what you are doing with complete awareness. When people lose this sense of active participation, their inner worlds begin to fracture. They drift between distractions, chasing stimulation that never satisfies. But when they rediscover flow, life regains its center. The self stops scattering, and begins to spiral inward, toward coherence, toward wholeness. There is, then, a sacred geometry to happiness. Each moment of concentration becomes a line, each act of creation a curve. Together, they form the pattern of a fulfilled existence. Meaning is not something you search for, it is something you assemble through presence. And in this realization lies a quiet revolution. Happiness ceases to be a pursuit. It becomes a byproduct, the natural result of a mind ordered around what it loves. Those who live this way discover that even mundane acts can become transcendent. Cooking, writing, teaching, repairing, tending, all are capable of becoming portals into flow, if done with care and attention. For meaning does not demand grandeur, it requires engagement. Perhaps this is why Csikszentmihalyi once wrote, "The best moments are when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile." The word worthwhile is key. Because meaning is not given, it is earned, shaped through the discipline of doing. So ask yourself, not what brings pleasure, but what calls forth presence. What awakens within you that sense of living beyond yourself? Where does the boundary between effort and purpose disappear? To live that way is to participate in the architecture of life itself. To turn existence from accident to design. To make of consciousness a cathedral built not of stone, but of attention. And when you finally stand within that inner architecture, surrounded by the quiet hum of your own coherence, you may realize something extraordinary. Happiness was never the goal. It was the light that appeared whenever meaning took shape. There is a stillness that follows every great movement. The silence after the final note. The breath between one heartbeat and the next. That is where flow leaves us. Not exhilarated, not drained, but whole. For in its depths, one begins to understand that happiness was never a state to be reached, but a rhythm to be remembered. It is not fireworks, it is the quiet resonance of harmony between the self and life. Csikszentmihalyi's revelation was not a promise of constant bliss. He never claimed that flow erases pain, or that joy can be sustained without effort. Instead, he showed that true happiness arises when consciousness is ordered. When what we do, what we think, and what we feel all flow in the same direction. And that direction means, most people spend their lives chasing pleasure, the brief spark that flickers and fades. But flow teaches us that the soul hungers not for sparks, but for continuity, for the unbroken melody of purpose. When one acts in alignment with their deepest values, when the challenge ahead stretches, yet does not crush them, when attention fuses so entirely with the act that the self dissolves, that is when happiness ceases to be a pursuit and becomes a consequence. The dancer does not dance to be happy. She dances because in the dance, she is. The scientist does not study to escape boredom, but because discovery itself becomes a form of prayer. The craftsman, the writer, the teacher, the gardener, each, in their devotion, touches something that transcends the ordinary boundaries of self. In flow, happiness is not an emotion. It is a condition of being fully alive. This is why, when people look back on their lives, the moments that shine brightest are often the most challenging. They are the ones in which they gave themselves completely. To creation, to love, to learning, to the act of becoming. Moments when time disappeared, and the world felt both vast and intimate. It is in those moments that the soul remembers its original rhythm. A rhythm that does not depend on success, or recognition, or comfort. A rhythm born of movement itself. And so, the question we began with, does emotional elevation equal true happiness? Now finds its quiet answer. No. Happiness is not the thrill that burns brightly and vanishes. It is the flame that endures when thrill has passed. The steady warmth that remains when self and world move in harmony. It is not what you feel when life pleases you, but what you become when life flows through you. Flow does not promise escape from pain. It offers transformation through it. It does not promise endless joy. It offers depth, a life that, even in difficulty, feels worth living. Because in flow, even struggle sings. Every effort becomes part of a larger music. A silent symphony composed not by circumstance, but by consciousness itself. And as this music plays, something remarkable occurs. The boundaries between doing and being dissolve. The dancer is the dance. The thinker is the thought. The act of loving is the essence of loving. This is the essence of happiness. Not to possess, not to win, not to arrive, but to participate completely. Flow is life in its purest form. Selfless, seamless, sacred. And when you touch it, even for a moment, you will know that happiness was never somewhere else. Never hidden in the future or lost in the past. It was here. In the movement itself. In the merging of purpose and presence. In the eternal current of becoming. Perhaps, as this journey comes to a close, one truth becomes clearer than ever. Human beings have always sought happiness as if it were a distant peak. A hidden treasure waiting to be uncovered, or a smile shimmering somewhere beyond the horizon. Yet flow reveals a gentler, more profound realization. Happiness was never far away. It lives quietly inside every moment we fully inhabit. There are moments in life that seem insignificant, an afternoon spent reading alone. A rainy day, tidying up a small room. A quiet morning brewing coffee in a still kitchen. But it is in those very moments, when the mind stops fleeing the past and stops chasing the future. When we give ourselves entirely to a simple act, that life suddenly feels pure again. As if the world, in its own subtle way, whispers to us, I am here. And so are you. In those moments, flow is no longer a concept from a book. No longer theory, no longer psychology. It becomes a clear, living stream, running through us, cleansing us, and leaving behind an indescribable sense of wholeness. True happiness is not the sudden spark that flares in bursts of intense emotion. It is something that blossoms quietly, patiently, like a small shoot rising from the dark soil. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. But once it takes root, it stays. Softly, yet deeply. When a person works within flow, they no longer strive to prove anything. They no longer perform for approval. They no longer chase applause. They act because life itself wishes to move through them in the most beautiful way it can. And when that happens, happiness stops being a question and becomes an answer. A presence. Something as natural and unquestioned as breath, as heartbeat, as existence. And perhaps the most beautiful gift flow offers. It is a quiet reconciliation between the human being and the life they are living. We no longer feel lacking. No longer feel lost. No longer feel the need to strain to become better, greater, or enough. We return to the truth that living fully in a single moment, just one. It is already enough to feel the beauty of the entire journey. And if there is anything worth remembering, it is this. Happiness does not belong to the one who runs the fastest. nor to the one who searches the hardest. Happiness belongs to the one who knows how to pause and listen to the quiet current flowing beneath their own skin. That is real happiness. Not loud, not dazzling, but deep and true.